Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Jaiv Narottam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriye Nashtuprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhakti Naishtiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, today we're starting the chapter 8, Attaining the Supreme. So last chapter was knowledge of the Absolute, now how to attain it. But in the previous chapter, last verse, Krishna said, he used three technical terms. Sa adhibhutadi devam, mam sa adhi yagyam, chaye viduhu. Prayanakale api chamaham te vidur yukta chetasa. Those in full consciousness of me, who know me, the Supreme Lord, to be the governing principle of the material manifestation of the demigods and of all methods of sacrifice, can understand and know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even at the time of death. So now Arjuna has this question. Arjuna Uvacha, Kim tat Brahm kim adhyatmam kim karma purushatam adhibhutam cha kim proktam adhidevam kim uchyate. Now Arjuna got confused. Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. Because Krishna used all these terms, so Arjuna wants to know more about all this. In this chapter, Lord Krishna answers different questions from Arjuna, beginning with what is Brahman. In English, it is written as Brahman, but it is Brahm, actually. So what is Brahm? So they all, spelling is pretty much the same. Brahm, Brahman, and like for Brahm Jyoti, we use the word Brahm. And Brahma also. If it is not long A, then Brahma also spelled the same way. But we just have to know. So here it is, what is Brahman? The Lord also explains karma, fruitive activities, devotional service, and yoga principles, and devotional service in its pure form. The Srimad Bhagavatam explains that the Supreme Absolute Truth is also known as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. In addition, the living entity, the individual soul, is also called Brahm. Yes, Brahm means spiritual. Arjuna also inquires about Atma, which refers to the body, soul, and mind. So Atma can mean all these three. According to the Vedic dictionary, Atma refers to the mind, soul, body, and senses also. Arjuna has addressed the Supreme Lord as Purushottam, Supreme Person, which means that he was putting these questions not simply to a friend, but to the Supreme Person, knowing him to be the Supreme Authority, able to give definitive answers. So, no more Krishna or Keshav or Madhav. Now he's coming to the real thing. You're the Kim Karma Purushottam. You're Purushottam. You're the Supreme Person. So you please answer my questions. Adhi yagya katham kotra dehe asmin madhusudan prayana kale cha katham geyo asi niyatatma bhi. Who is the Lord of sacrifice? Adhi yagya. And how does he live in the body? O Madhusudan. And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? Prayana kale cha katham geyo asi niyatatma bhi. So Lord of Sacrifice may refer to either Indra or Vishnu. Vishnu is the chief of the primeval primal demigods, including Brahma and Shiva. And Indra is the chief of the administrative demigods. Both Indra and Vishnu are worshipped by yajna performances. But here Arjun asks, who is actually the Lord of yajna, sacrifice? And how the Lord is residing within the body of the living entity. So he wants to make sure everything is clarified. Arjun addresses the Lord as Madhusudan because Krishna once killed a demon named Madhu. Actually, these questions, which are of the nature of doubts, should not have arisen in the mind of Arjun because Arjun is a Krishna conscious devotee. Therefore, these doubts are like demons. And since Krishna is so expert in killing demons, Arjun here addresses him as Madhusudan so that Krishna might kill the demonic doubts that arise in Arjuna's mind. But see, another beauty of this dialogue, they both are in the battlefield, and Arjun in the second chapter, as we studied, he was completely disturbed, almost crying. His Gandhi was slipping, and that didn't happen too long ago. The whole conversation took about 45 to 48 minutes of Bhagavad Gita, and we are in 8th chapter, so almost in the middle. So that's about 20 minutes from the beginning of conversation. But these shlokas, the Sanskrit shlokas, they have a rule to follow, grammatical rule. One simple rule, there are many rules. One simple rule is when this two-line shloka is there, so they have to have 8 full syllables, 8 akshar. Half akshar, it's not counted. So, just like first line, Adhi Yagya Katham Kvatra. I mean, half of the first line. So, Adhi Yagya. So, Adha Yagya 4, Katha 6, Katra 8. So, Dehe Aswin Madhusudana, Daha Ma 3, Ma 4, Dha Sa Dana 8. So Arjun, even in this situation, he knows the rules, and whatever is coming out of his mouth is completely according to the grammatical rules. He could have used name of Krishna as Keshav, but then the grammar would be wrong for the shloka. So not only grammatically it's right, but logically also, as Prabhupada is mentioning, Krishna is Madhusudan. He's a killer of demon Madhu. So Arjun wants him to kill the demon of ignorance in his mind. Now the word prayanakali in this verse is very significant because whatever we do in life will be tested at the time of death. And actually, that is a final exam, the time of death. In Bengali also there is a saying, Bhajan kari sadhana kari marte jani leko. Prabhupada quoted this with whatever bhajan and sadhana you have done, it will be tested at the time of death. Or we will find out. Means whether you have really done bhajan sadhana or you are just a show off. Arjun is very anxious to know of those who are constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness. What should be their position at that final moment? At the time of death, all the bodily functions are disrupted, and the mind is not in a proper condition. Thus disturbed by the bodily situation, one may not be able to remember the Supreme Lord. Maharaj Kulashekar, a great devotee, prays, my dear Lord, not just now, I'm quite healthy, and it is better that I die immediately. so that the swan of my mind can seek entrance at the stem of your lotus feet. So, swan of my mind, because your feet are compared to lotus. You have lotus feet, and only swans can enter the stems of the lotus feet. So that's why he's saying is swan of my mind. The metaphor is used because the swan, a bird of water, takes pleasure in digging into the lotus flowers. Its sporting proclivity is to enter the lotus flower. Maharaj Kulashekar says to the Lord, now my mind is undisturbed and I'm quite healthy. If I die immediately thinking of your lotus feet, then I'm sure that my performance of your devotional service will become perfect. But if I have to wait for my natural death, then I do not know what will happen, because at that time the bodily functions will be disrupted. My throat will be choked up. And this is what happens, throat gets choked because of that phlegm. And I do not know whether I shall be able to chant your name. Better let me die immediately. Arjun cautions how a person can fix his mind on Krishna's lotus feet at such a time. So really the bodily functions go down, and even before death, because when we start getting older, organs either they stop working or they don't work to their 100% capacity, and other disturbances are there. So at the time of death, how difficult it is to remember Krishna or to even chant his name if we haven't practiced throughout our life. the the unit test will always be there in our life. So the unit tests are given in a school so that children prepare for the final exam. So the unit tests, or monthly, or sometimes it's weekly, or in America, it's very common to have pop quiz. Pop quiz is nobody plans, and teacher just walks into the class. Okay, first thing, pop quiz about what we studied yesterday or day before or last week. And sometimes it's counted towards the final grade. So the point is, this unit test or pop quiz, unit test at least they tell us what time it will be or when it will be. Pop quiz, nobody knows. You just got to be ready. So these exams are there in our life to test us. Are we making progress, and how much progress we have made in spiritual life? What's the first thing that comes to our mind when something goes wrong? And definitely things will go wrong because things don't happen exactly according to what we want. Accidents happen, or anything. Anybody can say something to us. Then these are the unit tests. What are we thinking? What is our consciousness? What are the words that come out of our mouth? So these are basically preparing us for the final exam. Hey, if in the unit test you're thinking this, what will happen in the final exam when your body stops working and disrupted organs are disrupted, and still the Shastra says think of Krishna. And most of the time people are thinking of their loved ones that he or she is going to leave behind. Shri Bhagwan Uvacha Aksharam Brahma Paramam Svabhavo Adhyatmam Uchyate Bhut Bhavot Bhav Karo Visarga Karma Sangita. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the indestructible, transcendental, living entity is called Brahma, and his eternal nature is called Adhyatma, the self. Action pertaining to the development of the material bodies of the living entities is called karma, or fruitive activities. So Brahm is indestructible and eternally existing, and its constitution is not changed at any time. So Brahm means the soul. Krishna is saying transcendental living entity is called Brahm. And Prabhupada said Brahm means indestructible. Of course, soul cannot be destroyed. Krishna explained that in second chapter. And eternally existing, Sanatana. And its constitution is not changed at any time. Constitution means the original position, intrinsic character. Jivera Swarupa Krishnera Nityatas. But beyond Brahm, there is Parabrahm. Brahm refers to the living entity, and Parabrahm refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is what Arjuna says in 10th chapter. You are Parabrahm. So we are Brahm, spiritual, living entities, indestructible, eternally exist. The constitutional position of the living entity is different from the position he takes in the material. The constitutional position is different from the position we take in the material world. The material world, we are man, woman, Indian, American, Chinese, and dog, cat, whatever. But that's not. And we try to serve our body, our senses, our byproducts of the body, or the place that we are from, we relate to. But constitution position is completely different. In material consciousness, his nature is to try to be the Lord of matter. But in spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness, his position is to serve the Supreme. It's a huge difference. Here we are trying to be the Lord of matter, or Lord of everything that we survey. We try. And how much we succeed, that depends. But this is the whole idea of material. We want to make more and more and more and more money because we want to control Maya. We want to control what we can buy because of that money. Not realizing nobody has ever been able to control Maya. Even big kings, dynasties have come and gone. Where are they? Where is Alexander, Napoleon? Where is the British Empire, Greek Empire, Mongolian Empire, Ottoman Empire? Where are they? When we read in the history how this Mughals first came to India, then British came, Portuguese came. What's the situation now? And not just came to India, so went to so many other parts of the world and just created havoc over it. They didn't go there to preach. They didn't go there to show how to love God. They went to take over the properties, the land, the countries. But then what? Countries are still there. Okay, they might have converted people from whatever the original faith was to Christianity or to Islam. But then what? Where are the originals? Those originals, so where are their descendants? Because we don't realize karma is also there. And soul is eternal. Body is going to leave the body, change the body, but karma remains with the soul. And the soul has to go through that karma, karmic reactions. If we understand this part, we will not commit any sin. But so much of ignorance is there. And that's why Arjun asked so many questions in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna answered. Bhagavad Gita is basically, it wasn't for Arjun. Arjun, he knew everything. It is for us. So in material consciousness, his nature is to try to be the Lord of matter. But in spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness, his position is to serve the Supreme. When the living entity is in the material consciousness, he has to take on various bodies in the material body. This is called karma, or varied creation by the force of material consciousness. In Vedic literature, the living entity is called Jivat and Brahma, but is never called Brahma. The living entity, Jivatma, takes different positions. Sometimes he merges into the dark material nature and identifies himself with the matter. And sometimes he identifies himself with the superior spiritual nature. Therefore, he is called the Supreme Lord's marginal energy. So sometimes he is in Maya, and sometimes he is in Yoga Maya. According to his identification with material or spiritual nature, he receives a material or spiritual body. In material nature, he may take a body from any of the 8.4 million species of life. But in the spiritual nature, he has only one body. Because he doesn't change his body in the spiritual world. Here we are changing the body means the soul is going through 8,400,000 species. In the spiritual world, his constitutional position is eternal in the same body. And there is no difference between body and soul in spiritual world, but just to understand. In material nature, he is manifested sometimes as a man, demigod, animal, beast, bird, etc., according to his karma, to attain material heavenly planets and enjoy their facilities. He sometimes performs sacrifices, yajna. But when his merit is exhausted, he returns to earth again in the form of a man. This process is called karma. Although Prabhupada says when his merit is exhausted, he returns to earth again in the form of a man, it could be any form actually. He can take the form of an animal also. Chandogya Upanishad describes the Vedic sacrificial process. On the sacrificial altar, 5 kinds of offerings are made into 5 kinds of fire. The 5 kinds of fire are conceived of as the heavenly planets, clouds, the earth, man, and women. And the 5 kinds of sacrificial offerings are faith, the enjoyer on the moon, rain, grains, and semen. So, yes, how they are sacrificial offering, that depends. In the process of sacrifice, the living entity makes a specific sacrifices to attain specific heavenly planets and consequently reaches them. When the merit of sacrifice is exhausted, so merit of sacrifice means the bank balance of pious activity or pious credits. The living entity descends to earth in the form of rain, then takes on the forms of grain. So he falls down on the earth in the form of rain. With the drops of rain, the soul falls, and then it goes into the plants. So then takes on the form of grains, and the grains are eaten by man and transformed into semen. So there could be unlimited souls coming down from heavenly planets. So it takes and goes into the grain, and the grain is eaten by the man, and then it becomes semen, which impregnates a woman. So the living entity or the soul is not dead. Soul is not the grain. It's just inside that grain. And that's grain is when it is eaten by a man, then it goes into the semen. The soul transfers into the semen, into the sperm. And then at the time of interaction, which impregnates a woman, the sperm, whatever it reacts with the, or goes into the egg of women, and thus the living entity once again attains a human form to perform sacrifice, and so repeat the same cycle. And of course, an animal also can eat that grain. A bird can eat that grain. Then that soul gets a bird body or animal body. And the beauty of this is it's not just by chance happening. It's at random. No, everything is controlled. Which soul is going to fall in which place and which plant, and who is going to eat that grain, and who's going to be born in what form. It's all controlled. In this way, the living entity perpetually comes and goes on the material path. He performs sacrifices, so much of sacrifice. It's a hard labor to perform sacrifice. He goes to the heavenly planets, enjoys, and comes back, and then again gets a human form, or whichever form. If he gets a human form, then he again performs, gets a weight, grows up, and then performs sacrifice again. Again goes to the heavenly planet, again comes down. And not necessarily he performs sacrifices. He can perform sinful activity, then he has to go to hell, and then again come back to earth. Or he remains on this planet and keeps on taking birth here on this planet. It's such a vicious cycle. And that is why Bhagavatam, what does it say? Dharma swanushtita punsam vishwaksen katha suyat. Na utpadya yadi ratim ishram eva hi kevalam. Man, following the dharma, if you haven't developed the taste of Vishwaksena Kathasu, means Krishna Katha, Krishna Seva, then it's a Shrama Evahi Kevalam. It's only useless labor, wastage of time, nothing else. And actually it is, if you look at it from bigger picture. The Krishna conscious person, however, avoids such sacrifice. He takes directly to Krishna consciousness and thereby prepares himself to return to Godhead. And return to Godhead means no more coming back, no more coming down. Impersonalist commentators on the Bhagavad Gita unreasonably assume that Brahma takes the form of Jiva in the material world, and to substantiate this, they refer to chapter 15, text 7 of the Gita. So chapter 15, text 7 is when Krishna says, Mame vansho jiva loke jiv bhuta sanatana. They're my ansha. When how they misinterpret the Mayavadis, when Krishna says they are my ansha, it doesn't mean Krishna is getting deformed, or all the jivas, see, in material understanding, if I take a small piece of paper and I tear it up in different smaller pieces. So smaller piece of paper is ansha of bigger piece, but bigger piece is gone now. The original bigger piece is not there because it has been separated into smaller pieces. So they understand it this way. But Krishna has explained already in second chapter, the soul cannot be cut to pieces. If the soul cannot be cut, then how can Krishna be cut into pieces and lose his identity? No. But in this verse, the Lord also speaks of the living entity as an eternal fragment of myself. Means, in this verse means 15.7. The fragment of God, the living entity, may fall down into the material world, but the Supreme Lord, Achyuta, never falls down. So, they are two separate entities, the Lord and the living entity. And living entity is, as explained earlier, eternal. And it has its constitutional position to serve the Lord, not to become the Lord. Becoming of the Lord, or becoming like the Lord, or trying to be the controller, enjoyer, proprietor, that is Lord's characteristics. But here we are trying in the material world. So the point is, we are trying to become the Lord. We cannot. And why do we try? Because we are part and parcel of Krishna, who is the original proprietor, controller, and enjoyer. So we have the same tendencies. But same tendencies doesn't mean we have the same qualities or same amount of qualities. Infinitely qualified Krishna. We are infinitesimal. How can we be same as the Lord? So this part, this knowledge, this is what scriptures tell us. But everybody is trying to be the controller to whatever extent they can. And in the end, what? We all are going to die, that is for sure. But more we try to control, more our attachment or entanglement will be there. And more entanglement means next birth is definitely there, and we're going to go through the sufferings again and again. Therefore, this assumption that the Supreme Brahman assumes the form of Jiva is not acceptable. It is important to remember that in Vedic literature, Brahman, the living entity, is distinguished from Para Brahman, the Supreme Lord. So they are two different, completely distinct entities. So I guess we can stop here because it's very, very technical. Many technical terms are there. So we'll take a next class. See, anybody has any questions about it?
Nice class, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
प्रभु जी कृष्णा की मैनेजमेंट इतनी जबरदस्त है कि कोई चैलेंज नहीं कर सकता है
हमें ही लगता है ना, वो देख नहीं रहे हैं, कुछ कर नहीं रहे हैं, सब हो रहा है.
प्रभु जी,
Yes, Mata.
from a scientific point of view, rain is formed from evaporation of water, and through gravity it falls, correct?
Yeah.
But in Bhagavad Gita, they say rain as soul. How do you kind of imbibe into the heart that rain is soul?
Okay, not every drop of rain has a soul. So what happens in the heavenly planets? So when a particular living entity, he is enjoying, in heaven means enjoyment, he is enjoying, but his bank balance of pious activities are over. Everything is controlled, calculated. So to understand it, so he is sitting with his friends and the apsaras are dancing and he's having nice food and beverages, and all of a sudden his time is over. So he is kicked out of that company, of that club. So he cries because he wants to enjoy, but no more enjoyment. Your time is up. And then he is thrown out of the heavenly planet, heavenly kingdom. And outside heaven are demons, because this fight is always going on. So they see this soul, of course, he is not given that body, the soul comes out, but the soul is given some form, yatna de. So these demons, they are there, so they beat him up also. Because they find somebody to beat up. So then he cries. He cries, and it is mentioned, Prabhupada said, his tears mix with the rain, drops of rain, and then he falls on the ground.
Okay.
And also rain, yes, scientifically, yes, the water evaporates, but there are, again, many questions are there. But Krishna has explained in second or third chapter of Gita that rain happens because of sacrifice. Of course, our sacrifices, we are not sitting down and performing sacrifice, but whatever work we are doing as a common man, it's a sacrifice. So rain happens because of sacrifice.
And
yes, the technical process, scientific process is that water evaporates and goes. Again, that is just to talk of rain. It goes up to whatever height, right? It goes up to whatever 30,000 feet and forms the clouds. And those clouds, they're not in the form of droplets; they are frozen ice because at that height. And then those clouds are carried by wind to certain area. See, if they don't not winds are not carrying the cloud, then the rain would happen only at the sea.
Everywhere.
But now it happens everywhere. So who controls the clouds? Who controls which area will get how much rain? Who controls? Somebody is controlling that. It's not just happening on its own. And then look at these clouds. We call it millions of gallons worth of water tank without any walls.
That is true. And then
this is creation.
What living plants it feeds, that also we don't know.
We don't know. And sometimes there's too much rain, sometimes no rain in certain area. So who decides? Somebody is deciding, right?
Yep.
So this part, science doesn't teach.
That's true.
ठीक है, चलो.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Jai Shri.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. Jai